We are going to be talking about Diablo 4. Chris and I both had the opportunity to play it back in the day. I really enjoyed what they showed off. It is an exciting time to be a fan of Diablo, and it's at the same time it's an interesting time to be concerned about how they're going to monetize. Does this mean for the future? All in all, it's going to be very interesting. Now, Chris and I actually haven't really talked about it in terms of like what we are seeing online and what people are saying. So this is a good opportunity for us to kind of get caught up on the state of Diablo 4, our expectations for its launch. And the question first to you, Chris, is are you going to be playing Diablo 4 or do any of the things warrant a delay?
So I think first of all is we haven't spent a lot of time talking about that genre of game. And so I want to kind of just talk for a little bit about kind of where you're coming from. So I played a fair bit of Lost Ark. I played a lot of Wolcen, actually. I played a ton of previous Diablos. And I never really spent a lot of time with Path of Exiles. I've watched a lot of it, never really spent a lot of time. And those are kind of like the defining titles that jump to mind as far as that style of gameplay. There are other games I played that kind of fall really close, but those are the ones that define it. And so I've played a lot of them over the years, but I play them very seasonally. And so a game being a success or not a success, it doesn't matter if it can hold me forever because I've always thought of them as very, very seasonal games. And seasonal is a word they've ended up kind of using as a way to long-term support those games. So they are aware of this and leaning into the seasonal nature of games like this, where if you want to take a season off, that's fine. There will be another season. You just hop back in. So right out of the gate, that's kind of my history with the genre. You and I did get a chance to play the tech demo when it was available back at BlizzCon. The tech demo, obviously, just being really, really rough. I thought it played great, but like it could have changed a ton since then. When we talk about monetization, I think that's another topic. So first of all, kind of like, where are you coming from on this topic?
So when it comes down to it, I could care. Like, I don't like pay to win. But I don't think. I think the problem is that pay to win in terms of gaming culture has been insanely like watered down, and it could mean anything to everybody. Also, I don't subscribe to the idea that a gamer will avoid a game if the game is good. And so I've seen a lot of people like, I'll never play a free to play game, yada yada yada. Oh, it turns out free to play game's a lot of fun. Well, guys, you do you, right? Like the reality is that I don't struggle with feeling like my money is just kind of getting yeeted out into the void because thankfully I don't have that problem. And I also have a wife that probably would murder me. Like, how much did you spend on Diablo Immortal? Nothing. How much did you spend on Lost Ark? Nothing. Like, how much did you spend on like the X, Y, and Z game? Nothing. Like, it's like I just haven't spent money on it. And so like in Lost Ark, actually I bought the pack, which was fine because I actually played a lot in Korea, but more or less I guess Tower of Fantasy. How much did you spend on Genshin Impact? Nothing. Like, I haven't spent any money. I just kind of play them, and if I decide to really get invested in it, I got no problem supporting it. The question is how do you then monetize it? Personally speaking, I don't think the battle pass is ultimately a flawed idea. I think its implementation in games is flawed. And so I'm hoping that we'll see the evolution of the battle pass, especially in a game like Diablo or in anything else, to kind of look what Halo did right. Like everything else is they need to work on it, but what they did right is allow you to own that battle pass, and you can equip it whenever you want. So even if you don't finish it, it doesn't just disappear. You can literally go back and select battle pass from season 1 or whatever and grind on it if that's what you want to do. You bought it, and then I think that also opens it up for them to sell battle passes at any point in time. It's not always about the moment, but it's about like, hey, we have this content if you want to go grind on it. And so if they were able to go into that direction, they want to monetize with cash. Like that's what the monetization system is. That's when you go look at the, like all the games, everybody as a part of the next generation of gamers is trained up in, vanity and battle pass. And I think Diablo has a unique opportunity to kind of capitalize on that. What will be a weird thing is that obviously you have Diablo as an established franchise with an established player base. And you also have this established seasonal model. And that seasonal model is changing into the battle pass model. And I think there's definitely going to be some friction, some frustration there. And you obviously have the fear mongering and concerns after Immortal. But I think that could actually benefit Diablo 4 in the long run because if everybody's worried that the monetization is just going to be absolutely garbage, and then it turns out that it's like, oh, that's actually okay. Like, then you're not going in saying we're going to have the perfect monetization model. It's going to be so gamer focused. And then all of a sudden it's like, then you have Immortal, where it's like that's what happened there. They're like, hey, yeah, this is us. We're the ones who are setting this. And then all of a sudden you go into Immortal and you're like, this is a massive, massive cash grab. But that's just what I think. What do you think?
Okay, so we'll jump to monetization. So Diablo 3 on launch had a monetization choice. There had been a secondary market for items in Diablo 2.
Mm-hmm.
Blizzard saw none of that money. People lost a lot of accounts. There was a lot of heartache. I don't remember when the WoW token was, if it was before that or after that.
It was after that for the token,
monetization in games had been kind of this like, how do we handle this? So they decided we're going to do a real money auction house. And now the real money auction house, I had friends that made like hundreds and hundreds of dollars doing this. It on its own, it basically kind of was like, oh, and if you find something really cool, you can sell it. But it kind of turned everything really goofy really fast.
Yeah.
And then it also meant that anything a certain value, like it just screwed things, as opposed to the barter system that exists in Diablo 2. It just scaled everything really weird. And then when they pulled it out, everything had been built around it. And so the game didn't like immediately, you kind of pulled this support out, and part of the one side of the game felt like it just kind of crumbled, and then they had to build it back up. And so I think Diablo 3 kind of grew back into something that was like really beautiful, considering that half of it was renovated. But it does make you wonder what Diablo 3 could have been had they not like had to collapse one side of the building the week they moved in. It was hard. But it became something that's been really successful, and like it's moved to things like Switch, and it's invited a lot of people into the Diablo franchise. And there's a lot of good things about what Diablo 3 is over its whole life cycle. It's just been marred by some really unfortunate choices. So when I look at Diablo 4, I think the first concern is people are going to think that it's the same people that did Diablo Immortal. And I would say that it's kind of like when people said that Blizzard was bad because of Activision, forgetting that Blizzard was perfectly capable of making mistakes before Activision. So I would say that if there are mistakes, that's not a sign that Diablo Immortal bled in, because there were already mistakes in mainline Diablos before that. And so they're perfectly capable. Had Diablo Immortal never released, they would still be capable of screwing out monetization out of the gate. And Diablo 3 has taught us that doesn't mean a death sentence. With a game like this that is truly seasonal, all that means is don't play the first season. And so there can still be a lot of beauty. If you've never played Diablo 3 and it goes on sale or something now, playing a single season of Diablo 3 now can still be a lot of fun. And there's a lot I like about that game. So I think I have a lot of hope for it. Their support for Diablo 2 coming back and everything they've done with Diablo 2 Resurgence, or whatever reword they've assigned to things now, because Reforged is off the table. Like it's been really amazing to watch that get supported. So I'm really hopeful for Diablo 4. I think it has a chance. I think it'll do really great out of the gate. Diablo Immortal's still like top of the App Store, even with all the hate. So
it's
if nothing else, the hype alone will drive pre-orders.
Hype is just a hell of a drug for gamers as well. So it's that even if it has bad monetization, if the game's a lot of fun to play, I think a lot of people will excuse it. They'll make an excuse for it, and then eventually that it will come back. Once that hype dies down, once that initial rush of excitement dies down, and then if you're left with this person just asking for money, then all of a sudden you see the opposite thing happen, where it's just enraged, like gamers just then, so you have these highs and lows, and that's an algorithmic, I think, function of our current society, and with YouTube and Twitch and Twitter and all the things that kind of that drive that. But before you jump in, Vasa says, talking about the FOMO of it, and that's why it's like, if you own a battle pass, the FOMO in that fear of missing out gets lessened, because literally you can choose to work on it whenever you do. When too much artificial FOMO is injected into any kind of monetization system, I completely opt the F out. I literally am like, oh, you're telling me I literally need to grind on this game nonstop for the next 90 days with, even if it was like, oh, it's only going to take you 30 to do this or 15 to do it. No, I'll be like, no, it's not worth it. Like, but if you're saying that I can own that battle pass and grind on it whenever I choose, I'll absolutely purchase it because I like that. I want to support the games that I like, and I want to support the systems that I like. And the best way to, in my mind, you vote is with your dollar. But you're going to say something, Chris?
I think that the second half of this, I'd love to focus also on like what do we want from gameplay. Mm-hmm. So like I started by saying like here's my history with this game type, and I do enjoy them. And then we stop to talk about monetization because if you don't talk about it, it seems like you're whitewashing it. So like that is naturally the second part of the conversation, and I think I'd love to shift.
Sure.
So
let's talk. Well, no, we've covered monetization.
What do we want from gameplay?
They've already delivered everything for me. I can't wait to hear what you got. Go ahead.
So, like, when I played Wolcen on launch, any of you that played Wolcen on launch, I had to go back. Wolcen on launch allowed for an insane amount of build variety, which meant that it was way beyond anything that could have possibly been quality checked, which means you could get yourself so far outside of the meta that once the community started finding these big power builds, the highs were so high and the lows were so low, that it got to where you felt like you couldn't even try out other builds because you had to go backward in progression so much. You could push these really high, deep levels, these like hell levels. You could push them really high with these better builds, and then you would try another build and it would set you back. You're like, well, that was a mistake. So like, but Diablo 2, I felt like there was so much build variety and I didn't feel penalized like that. So what I want is Diablo 2. I want runes back. I want variety back. And I love what they've started to do with this kind of seasonal, like we're going to add a set or we're going to just toss a wrench into the machine and see what it does. So I think the first thing that like I really want confirmation on, they've talked on it in some panels and stuff, but as we get closer, I want to start seeing evidence that this is a game that if one season's not for you, that the system's going to continue to evolve. The advantage of something like Diablo 4 over Final Fantasy 14 for me, why would I take a break and play Diablo 4, is build variety. Because build variety in a game like that, if it breaks, it all resets at the season anyway, and we're used to that. And I don't need to preserve old content. I don't need to be balanced with other players. It's all small lobby stuff. So like, ideally for me, I'm excited to break some stuff, but not to the point where we have to leave people behind. So like, I think it's a lot better when like we can really go loose, true, just agency to the point of as far as you can go without beginning of Wolcen. Wolcen got fixed that later, and it was way better when I went back for another season. As far as you can go,
jump back into Wolcen. Did they ever add controller support?
I don't know.
Bummer.
I don't play games with controller.
Well, because Diablo 4's got controller support. Diablo 4's got crossplay, cross-prog.
I play shooters with. I only play shooters. Shooters and racing games are the only things I use a controller for.
I'm just saying, like, for me, when you talk about that sounds great. They've already kind of shown that off, and as long as they don't cut it, like, build variety and options are awesome. And yes, there will always be a meta, but F that meta, dude. Like, I don't care. Like, metas are only important when matchmaking, I think, is implemented as opposed to that. Because if we were all like, hey, let's get together. Oh, I'm going to bring my wacky kind of build because it does these things and it might, even synergize with your options that you've chosen. So we can, things like that. Like, I like that aspect, but meta is a form.
Do you like class synergy?
Yeah, I always
like when two people together are better than individual.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. And so like if there's skills that can synergize off of one another, that'd be sweet, because then essentially like, yeah, maybe that skill isn't meta, but then you rocking this skill and me rocking this skill, we're clearly doing better than everybody's prescribed meta. And so, but that's where matchmaking comes in. Matchmaking and meta becomes the be all end all, because it becomes this community standard, this unspoken agreement that if we're going to get teamed up together, that what you're doing. So you're not, like having a negative impact on my experience. And that's where like, that's just where I come into it. So the ability to do that, the ability to respect, the ability to save, like maybe these builds would be epic. And the fact that when it comes down to it, 14's with the gears, like it doesn't have builds in 14, but it would be like, at least you can have that saved aspect, so you're not sitting here having to, oh, Chris and I are playing together, let me try to remember what I was doing. That is important to me. That's also the same thing with Destiny. It's like, I'm glad Destiny's finally getting loadouts in the game itself, because then it gives me the ability to experiment more, in a more casual way that's more fun and flexible.
I mean, I think there will always be a meta, because ultimately better is better. And while not everybody wants to be the best, nobody wants to suck. And so when you only have so many hours in a day, I think that metas establish. But if we're going to be additive here, and I'm just going to pile on top of everything you say, then what I would love for that to have, if we're going to have respecs and loadouts and all that, is one of the things that Diablo 2 kind of stops you from doing that, or one of the things that these games make very hard, is account wide. And so giving me the ability to manage like an armory across all my classes and switch to them more seamlessly. Like, imagine if you could have Final Fantasy job swaps with like a Guild Wars account wide system in a Diablo 2 build environment. One of the hard things about Destiny is that you get this piece of loot for your hunter, and the act of switching to your hunter, especially back when I was on a machine that had really long load times, I had to like log out and then and then back into a fire team. And so it's like, well, then I'm just like, I played hunter. It's like, well, I'm just not going to play warlock. Like, the act of building out a warlock just made me want nothing to do with it.
It's the same thing, and that is going to tie into our next topic about like, well, I guess I got to go do the story again, and I got to do this again, and I got to, like, I don't want that. Like, is there a way? Like, so you're exactly on point. Now, I want to make sure, is there any, like, because I've listed everything that I want. Is there anything else that you want in terms of Diablo 4 and content? Because you pretty much teed off the last topic for today's show.
No, I think that's really it. I just want a game it's always going to be a secondary game to me. So, something to explore, and it doesn't need to be perfect. So it's not my bread and butter. It's not where I get all my entertainment hours. So, I'm excited about it. And I know that, I'll come for your warlock. No, I'm not coming for your warlock, because I don't want the load screen. I'm interested in warlock, and I'm just not going to take the time to unload my hunter. I picked hunter the first time I played Destiny 2, and now I'm locked in.
You're locked in forever.
Load screen.
For fear of that.
Can't try them out. Can't do it. Actually, I think mine aren't leveled, but so I'm ready to talk about alts in Final Fantasy 14 and why Yoshi P's recent comments makes that kind of a weird topic now. But yeah, I see people saying like this will drive them to PoE. If nothing else, D4 kind of reinvigorates that genre, and it's the importance of genres. When we talked about MMOs, when people say WoW is dead, that's bad for all MMOs. So don't hope for that. So D4 can be good even for Path of Exile. So just more games that are more fun for more people. I hope Diablo 4 can be that. And if it's not, I think that's bad for everybody.
Absolutely. Anyhow, guys, that was the Diablo 4 conversation. If hopefully you enjoyed this video and stream, if you did, hit that like button, subscribe for more of these, or join us on our live shows where we film this Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the mornings. So it's great having you here. Now, next up, we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy 14. Is it alt friendly?